Hey everyone, Madcarver here with Shaft Tools. In this video, I'm going to talk about design creation. In that, I mean how I create and how I choose the designs that I'm going to do for the wood carving. And then finally, I'm going to also talk a little bit about perspectives and the basics of how perspective works with the designs that I create. All right. Let's get to it. Okay, let's look a little bit more into design creation and a bit more about perspective as well. Let's start with a carving that I did on, I think, at the beginning of the year. This is a rose, as you can tell. It's flat. It's a 2D photocopy. It's just paper. But the art itself does show us some depth. So down below the petals and the rose itself, it's just the stalk, but you can see the stalk going in behind the upper area. You can also see petals that are definitely behind other petals from the front. And here as well, we can also see a lot of shadow and wrinkles in the petals, which help us to discern depth. So when you create from a 2D object into a 3D object, you're really just copying everything that's on there. And then where you saw depth, you're going to go and create that. So we have a petal here that's behind many of the others. So we cut it in its basic shape. And then we cut in along the line of the other petal. Knowing that it's behind, we cut more there and push it behind. And we really just did that everywhere. So you can see that we have a center, we have the next petal, we have the next petal, and then another petal, all sitting behind. It's really only an inch thick, but we're forcing that perspective. Okay, with our next one, we have a worm's eye view of a city street, right at the junction of the curb and a cobblestone street. We have a horizon line giving us the perception of quite a bit of distance from where we're looking to where we're going, and we have other buildings in the background. And so what I wanted to create here was this illusion. So having it quite large here and very small over here definitely fools the mind into believing that they're literally looking at this level. So that helped us really recognize the concept of perspective. And I think about it, perspective is really just how someone sees something. In regard to wood carving, we use perspective as a technique to create the illusion of the depth that we have here. So 2D, flat, nothing, no 3D at all, to creating the 3D by cutting very little. This is a 3/4 inch block, so we cut very little to create that. So from here to around up here, it's not much, but the drawing itself helped us create that illusion in our mind. Okay, here's our next example. We have here a stone archway and wooden door in kind of a fantasy scene, something you might see in a castle or a dungeon or something like that. And what's great about this is the perspective that you get from looking at the 2D art in addition to the 3D art. So you can see that you're over here on the right hand side looking left because it's lower here, the bottom of the door and the stone over here, it's lower over here and higher over here. So there's an angle here that we have to maintain with the floor and the archway and the door. Additionally, the perspective shows the inside edge of the stone archway in addition to the underside of the stone. Slight bits to the right, but diminishing to nothing. by the time you get over here. So that's great perspective to be cutting into your block. Additionally, it was a lot of fun because I was able to work with the door, creating basic hinges and the planks that make up the door itself, handles, and also cutting in the center line that separates the doors and creating overall texture. I wanted to create a rough hewn stone concept and, of course, separate every stone cleanly. So that was good. I know that people learned a lot from this tutorial, and so I'll probably do more of this sort of thing in the future. Okay, our last project to show you is tomes. I named this one Tomes because I really wanted the idea of an old English library and books that you might find there. So these are kind of, leather bound, and they have the texture of leather that I tried to create here. And instead of just a stack of books sitting straight, I haphazardly set them in place so that, this one sticks out more here. So you get shadow underneath, and you can see the depth distances here. It also sits back a little further here so that it tries to denote the proper placement of books that would look like that. And this is kind of forced perspective, and forced perspective basically manipulates human perception through the use of scaled objects like these and these here, and the parallel, or rather the correlation between them also. You got to keep in mind that, you know, depending on where the onlooker is sitting, either here or here or here or further back or closer up, the perception is going to change. The books will look larger, the table will look larger. If he's way back, he may not be able to discern anything going on in the background. But you can see that things will change a lot depending on where the onlooker is viewing from. Okay, so there we go with tones. Let's go over a little bit on design creation. So I've been at this for quite a few years now, and I generally just choose things that really grab my interest. And for me, a lot of that's fantasy art like Lord of the Rings, dragons, goblins, stuff like that. Really love that stuff. But when I do projects for beginning or intermediate, or people just trying to get their feet wet with relief carving, I do stuff that I think is going to help them and they're also going to like. So things like this are very helpful to recognize perspective and forced perspective and texturing, and things that really challenge you. Like, it's interesting that you can see that this doorway is sitting on some sort of surface, concrete, other stone, who knows. But meeting a door up and an archway with the ground is somewhat difficult when you just started carving. So I like to teach that sort of thing. And then the rose is very interesting. People like these, they're very pretty. You can learn so much from trying to tuck all these petals under and behind and on the side. Lots of stuff to learn there. So these are the things that I like to teach because they help a lot. For you, though, what you can do is, maybe get some royalty free clip art, or you can make your own drawings, or coloring books. I've heard that as well through some of the chat groups that I'm in. A lot of them like children's coloring books to find other types of art that they can use to learn. So, one of the best lessons that I've learned in my many years of relief carving is that in order to create some really nice perspective, having one main subject here and many lesser subjects behind help you create great perspective. So, the rose has many petals and many petals behind it. There's contours and shapes and rounds that create wrinkles, and all of that helps you create the sense of depth. And, the stone archway has you sitting in a specific, perspective on the right hand side, and you can look left, seeing many different angles. Not only can you see what's facing you, but you can see to the right or to the left, the underside of the stones, and then the right hand side of the stones. All of that helps you to really imagine it in 3D and see it in 3D. The street here shows a worm's eye view, and you can really get the idea that your eye is right there in the gutter and that you can see the side of the curb and the top of the curb and where it's going into the distance, in addition to the cobblestone streets and the buildings behind. Having objects, or rather subject matter, behind your main subject really, really help with perspective.